Okay, thank you. Weird. Okay, so welcome again. If you didn't catch any of the intro because the volume wasn't on for some weird reason, my name is Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream that we do every single Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It runs for about 3 hours, and if you have a question, you can email me at deardana@thriveafterabuse.com, and I will do my best to answer it. So, and Carol and Lucy, hello. She says it's a little quiet, but I can hear you mostly. Let's see. Let's see if I can do anything about that. I don't. Is that better at all? People are saying turn up the volume. It's so weird because we. Is that better? That should be a lot better, I would think. Nope. Can't hear you very low. I wonder if that makes a difference on this computer. Oh, Nina says in general for the live streams, the volume is too low. Okay, now they're saying it's better. Lucy says yes, SG, yes, yes, yes. Okay. I don't understand. I don't mess with any of the settings in here, but I don't think so. I think we're good. Okay, so welcome. And let's see what's been going on since last week. Well, I turned 40, which was a big milestone birthday. That was exciting. It's always kind of interesting time when you have a birthday that ends in a 5 or a 0. But it's exciting. It's a new chapter in my life. Shara says the cats changed it. They might have. Donna says, thank you so much. You're a 10 out of 10. Thanks so much for doing your live stream. So I'm so glad. Thank you for that. And I'm so glad that they helped. And let's see, what else did I have for you guys? Oh, Bear. I don't know if he's on yet tonight or if he's planning on being here, but he sent me some pictures of himself in one of the tank tops that he'd ordered with the Thrive After Abuse Phoenix on it. And that was awesome to see. So thank you for sending me pictures of that. Different people have been sending me pictures of themselves with like the coffee cup or the t-shirt, and it's fun. Even if you guys don't buy any of that stuff, it's still just really fun to put a face to a name. So Amanda says, I left my narcissist at 40 and I'm now 43 and I have an amazing life. Yeah. It's never too late. It's never too late to start over. And I will say, being 40 now, when I was younger, I so remember being 25 or even 35 and thinking and feeling like I was too old. I was too old to go back to college. I was too old to start over. I was too old. Like that ship had sailed. And for anybody out there, at any age, please know, life is long. Your life is long. And we live it in chapters, and it's never too late to start over. You're never too old. So follow kind of what pulls you and follow what brings you peace into your life, whatever that might be. If it's moving in a direction that's empowering and nourishing, that's the right direction. Yeah, Lou says I'm 35 now and I feel so old. Yeah. And I think even if a person doesn't go through narcissistic abuse in general, 35 is tough. 25 is tough. 30 is tough. That kind of whole span of 10 years can be really tough for a lot of people. There's all this kind of social expectation of what we should be and where we should be in life. And it's really easy to get caught up in comparing ourselves to other people, and doing that at any age is really rough, and not worth doing, because life is all about running our own race. And I'm probably not going to say your name right. Johan, I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly, says, I have a dangerous obsession with a narcissist. I can't, I swear, 24/7. Is it possible to calm that obsession down? Yes. And that's very, very normal. So a lot of people find themselves like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm a different person. I'm having a hard time. I'm like stalking them on social media. I can't quit looking at their Facebook page, or I keep checking my phone, hoping that they've texted me, or, I keep thinking about them, or I'm dreaming about them. What's wrong? And a lot of that is these relationships don't make sense. And our brain is a meaning making machine. And so our brain is really designed to try to make sense of things. And so when things don't make sense, it goes into overdrive, trying to gather more and more and more information to kind of complete the puzzle. And so those feelings of like rehashing that obsessiveness is all part of it. I've yet to meet somebody, myself included, who's gone through something like this and didn't feel that way. Something that can help is to consciously redirect your energy. It's sort of like trying to quit any type of addiction or compulsion, whatever it might be. So if you've ever tried to quit smoking or drinking or gambling, or whatever it might be, it's very similar. Like, you're going to have cravings, you're going to feel this pull, and it really helps to kind of supplement, to fill that void with something else, or ideally having an idea or strategy, if you will, of different things that you can use to fill that void. So for example, if you quit smoking, to get some sort of plan in place. Okay, I'm going to drink water. I can go for a walk. I can journal. I can go watch some stand up comedy for a little bit, something. And getting that kind of action plan in place before you need it is really helpful, because you're gonna have those cravings. It's part of quitting anything that's very addictive. And these relationships, even though they can be really awful, can also be very addictive. It's part of like this whole, the highs and lows of it all, and the intensity with that comes with these relationships. And you have to kind of wean yourself off. So it does help to have a plan in place and to consciously redirect your attention to something else, and those feelings do tend to fade in time. Yeah, AJ says, hi Dana, I'm 19 months out since I left. I'm still in and out of family court for child contact and criminal court for stalking and harassment. I keep having bad dreams about him. I guess it's normal. It is. It's very normal. It's stress. It's stressful. It's normal to have anxiety and adrenaline and confusion and anger and hurt and all of that intensity, and all of those feelings. A lot of times they'll come through our dreams, and it can be hard to realize, I think, sometimes, that we are feeling this way, because for so many people, they've been feeling this way for so long that it's been a long time since they've had peace in their life. And so to them, they're like, what's wrong with me? I'm having all of these nightmares or this anxiety. But the reality is you're in an exhausting and draining and anxiety ridden situation. It's just, this has become the new normal. And so, but it's because it's not normal. Your brain is still trying to process all of that. It's sort of like living in this constant state of fight or flight. But hopefully once you can kind of get some of these things resolved and get some more peace in your life, the nightmares and all that anxiety will start to settle down. In the meantime, there are some things you can do, you know, tripling up. I was going to say doubling up, tripling up on your self-care, doing things that can help bring your anxiety down, affirmations, relaxing music, taking a hot bath, going for a walk, journaling, spending some time with friends, making time to have fun. I think so many people, and I get it, I was there too, feel like they don't want to have fun because they have all this adrenaline going through them. And it's this mindset of I need to wait until I'm healed and then I'll start enjoying life again. But the twist in that, kind of maybe the irony in that is it's the reverse. That healing, it's not waiting to heal and then be happy. It's learning to make time for happiness and that will help heal. So if you can, I think, view spending time to find some happiness in every single day as part of like your healing regimen. And it's important. It's important. And you might not feel like doing it, but realizing this is the way that I'm trying to exercise my brain because our brains are wired whenever we're in danger of any kind, emotional danger, physical danger, our brain will seize onto that. Like how an engine in a car just seizes up, your brain will seize up onto that event and it has a hard time letting go. And so a lot of this like shifting, consciously shifting between emotions, making the decision for the next 10 minutes, I'm going to go watch some comedy or I'm going to go for a run or I'm going to go just watch the ducks at the park. Something that brings you some joy. That's part of kind of this physical therapy for your brain. It's picking up it's like weights, like picking up emotions, putting them down, picking up different ones, putting them down. It's exercising your brain, realizing that you are in control even though it might not feel like you are, but you really are. And the more you do that and the more you kind of gain power over your emotions and realize that you can pick them up and put them down, I think it really is helpful in the long run. So Jessica says, I watch cat videos on YouTube. That's a good one. I mean, there's so many, you know, clever, cute little videos that are 5 minutes long that you can do. And if you find yourself, if these intrusive thoughts come back and you find yourself wanting to go check their Facebook, wanting or finding yourself kind of rehashing about events, taking a time to just remind yourself of that I can pick that up again in 10 minutes. But right now, I'm going to just take a deep breath. I'm going to watch some stuff on YouTube that I really enjoy, something that's not narcissist related, cat videos, stand up comedy, um, a cartoon. Uh, One of my favorite channels, actually, that I find really enjoyable is there's a guy called, his channel is called Primitive Technology. I don't know if you guys have seen him. This man is amazing, and the stuff that he builds, and there's no sound, well, I should say there's no talking in any of his videos. It's him out in the middle of the forest and he makes all of these things with primitive technology. It's very kind of this zen thing to just watch him. So finding channels that are just very different like that can really help to kind of reset your brain and to get you thinking on a different track. So let's see. Missouri Cowboy is here. Welcome. Diana, welcome. Debbie, thank you. Okay, let me. Oh, Lauren. Okay, Lauren says, I feel like no one really likes me, including friends. Is this common after abuse? Yes, it is. And it's common for people to question everything, to question who else might have an agenda, who else, um, feeling fearful of trusting other people again, feeling that maybe you start to see problematic behavior in your friends. That's very common and or family. And you're like, well, wait a minute. like or this coworker or this person's problematic too. And really what this is it's not that you're necessarily being hyper vigilant, it's that you're becoming more aware and awake to what problematic behavior looks like. And when people first realize that they've been abused, because most people don't realize it when they're in it. When people start, kind of after the fact, they realize, okay, I've been abused, then they find narcissism, or a lot of people find narcissism, right? And they start learning about this, and then they start seeing the world in a very kind of polarizing kind of way, very black or white kind of way. Either the person's a narcissist or they're not. And then that's kind of a phase and understanding. And then kind of the next phase after that is realizing, okay, everything's really on a spectrum, and it's not so important to really see the world in terms of this person's kind of, either a narcissist or a sociopath or what have you, or normal. But it's more important to see problematic behavior in the full spectrum. And so I see a lot of this, and again, I was there too, where people are like, I'm going out and I'm meeting friends, or if coworkers have said some stuff, or I just met this person on the internet through like an online dating site, and this is what I'm experiencing. Can you tell me if they're a narcissist? And my response is always, it's not. The label is great for validation and clarity when a person first kind of enters into this, because I think it's that awareness of that validation of what they experienced is outside the realm of normal. But then it can be really helpful to take that label and kind of put it aside a little bit and look at the behavior that it's pointing to. So, because it's not necessary, it's the label itself, while it's validating and clarity giving, it's the behaviors the label points to. So whether a person is a full out, narcissist, or whether they have narcissistic traits, either way, it's still a problem. So so then that's kind of where people go. They're like, okay, well, they start seeing kind of the spectrum of these different traits, selfishness, grandiosity, manipulative behavior, exploitative kinds of behavior, lying, cheating, stealing, any one of those things is a problem. So if so then kind of the next stage with that is, and this is where it comes down to you focusing on, okay, what is deal breaker behavior and deal maker behavior for you? And this is where you start to really kind of hone in on yourself and figuring out what's important for you, because what might be a deal breaker for me or for your best friend or somebody else might not be a deal breaker for you. And I see a lot of people kind of get lost in that again too. And it's a process. It's a process of figuring out who you are and reconnecting with yourself, and kind of turning inward and figuring out what's important to you in other people. So I guess that's kind of the long answer to your question. But yes, very common for people to start questioning the friendships. And frankly, this is a good thing too. I think we all should really examine who's in our inner circle on a fairly regular basis and see, okay, is this still a healthy relationship for where I'm at now in my life, for this person to be in my inner circle? Or has this person kind of been in my inner circle by default? I kind of thought, well, they're family, so I've got to keep all my family in my inner circle. And then you kind of wake up to this, and it's like, well, wait a minute. No, my cousin, this person's always borrowing money and never repaying me. And why am I hanging out with this person? Or I have this best friend since middle school, but he or she's always real flaky and I can't rely on them. And, they tell me I just need to get over it. And they make fun of me about my weight. And, then you're like, well, wait a minute. Why am I friends with this person too? So after abuse, it's very common for people to feel like this big bomb has gone off in their life. And I say this a lot, but the beauty in that is when your life is blown to pieces, then it's at that point that you can start reassembling your life piece by piece in a conscious way. You can start by examining brick by brick. Do I want to rebuild with this? Where did this belief come from about kind of what a friend is, or what a relationship is, or what a man is, or what a woman is, or religion, or culture, or anything? And then this is where it becomes like you creating this life of purpose kind of on purpose. And then it becomes an authentic life because you've really taken the time to examine what you want in your life. And you're no longer living a life of default, of possibly the religion that you were raised in, or the gender stereotypes that you were raised with, or the cultural expectations, or what have you. It's like, this is what you want in your life, and then you can move forward in that direction. So let's see here. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. Teresa says, happy belated birthday. And thank you so much for being you. You're such a gift to all of us. Oh, that means a lot. Thank you so much. And thank you for the donation. Is uh, never expected, but always much appreciated. So Hope says, they're just mentioning about predators on the internet, and says, but I mean, can internet friends substitute for real friends? I think so. The internet is such a game changer, and that's the beauty. I mean, my goodness, you think about kids, like, back when I was in high school, you either had people that were your people or you didn't. And it could be a really lonely time if a kid didn't have people that they could connect with. And now it's so cool because it's like, if a kid is really into anime, or, you know, anything, right? Knitting, or country dancing, or what have you, they can find those groups. And same with adults, they can find these groups online and really make some amazing connections with people online. Some of the people that I've made some of the best friendships with have been on the internet. And, now it's to the point where we see each other, but, I mean, I met a gal on the internet. This was, gosh, 10, maybe even longer plus years ago. And I adore her. And, we would meet up every couple years, and she's just fantastic. And I wouldn't have met her any other way. So, you know, I think too, it's very common for people after abuse to be very uncomfortable meeting people in person. So it's really kind of whatever you're comfortable with, and whatever is working for you. I will say it's always a good idea, either online or in person, to just try to have healthy boundaries at all times. That's just kind of my um, little reminder there. Yeah, that's a great point. The Lilith says we can also chat on Skype with our internet friends. Totally. Yeah, internet is such a game changer. Uh, I'm not going to say it's properly. May Witch says, okay, this discussion is so relevant to me at the moment in my life. I also just recently found out that many of my friends and my close sisters are also very unhealthy and narcissistic. Do I cut my sister off? And this is this is one of those things, like, where it becomes such a unique thing for you. So you'll have to kind of figure out, okay, where is your line with this? You know, if they're very unhealthy and toxic for you, do you want to go no contact? Do you want to go what's called low contact, where you're having, less contact with them? How do you want to approach this? And only you can kind of come up with that answer. So one thing that I think can kind of help guide that is to pay attention to how you feel when you're around them. This is a great thing, I think, for most people in general, is if you're with somebody and you find that when you're in their company, that you're anxious, that you're angry, that you're resentful, that you're irritated, that you feel defensive, like you're walking on eggshells, that you're being treated with hostility or contempt, or they're sabotaging you, or any of these kind of really unpleasant emotions, these are all a sign that this is not a safe person. And to kind of back things up a little bit and to where you're not feeling so impacted by them. Some other feelings that tend to go along with toxic people are feeling drained, feeling exhausted, feeling depressed, feeling anxious, feeling the need to call up somebody else and complain about this other person. So none of those actions or feelings are really found in a healthy friendship or in a healthy dynamic, you know? So you might find, okay, well, this is my sister. I still want to have her in my life. Maybe I can't spend every day with her. Maybe it's once a week, or maybe it's once a month, or maybe it's for a few hours, or maybe we kind of limit it to texting, or maybe we just take a break for a little bit. Or do you see what I'm saying? And you kind of pay attention to at what kind of where in your sphere of influence do you have a spot for her to where it's not negatively impacting you. And and to keep revisiting that. You'll know when you have that good balance of, you know what, I can do 3 hours, you know, like whatever, like once a month, or I can do 3 hours on Christmas and that's it. And I can send texts the rest of the time. Or maybe you decide you're like, you know what, I think I'm just done. Like I've been through too much and I'm just going to go no contact. Totally up to you. Mantis mentions the book, The Denial of Death. Thank you for reminding me. No, I have not read it, but I'm going to write it down again. The Denial of Death. Speaking of books, the book club book for this next book club is going to be on women who love psychopaths. And it's a book, I think it is still very useful for men. She talks about, and there's a link down below in the description if you're interested in it. It's written by a therapist, and she talks a lot about the differences between kind of different personality, like problematic, kind of low empathy type personality disorders. And I think it's just very interesting. Her work primarily deals with women that are in situations like this, but she does say, you know, it definitely pertains to men too. You know, it just for the ease of in the flow of writing, she was talking about it more from like a women's perspective, but you know, change the gender if need be, and the message that's important there. Let's see. Let me scroll up. Oh my goodness. Free to be me, says Dana. It's Terry. I just wanted to let you know I still listen to you. It's been almost 2 years since I left the narcissist. And guess what? 8.5 months after I left, he married a woman that he met online. Yeah. Ouch. Huh? But, you know, it's one of those things. It's like, you know, it's just glad that's not in my life anymore. And it's this next chapter and kind of onward and upward. And so I'm glad you're still around. Yeah, Diana was talking about sisters and she said, you know, I have to give up on my sister. I got tired of her putting me down all the time. I still love her, but from afar. Yeah. You know, it's one of those things. It's, I don't know why it is, but we all have this idea that abuse is a problem. Right? Abuse is a problem in a relationship unless that relationship was with family, and then somehow it's okay. And we need to be compassionate and forgiving and allow them to stay, to have full access to us and our lives and to just continue to just stampede their way through. And it's that's such dysfunctional thinking. And just because a person's family doesn't give them a free pass to cause damage in our lives, no matter what anybody else says, it really, really doesn't. And I'm a big fan of you guys need to do what's right for you. And you don't have to justify or explain or defend that to anybody. It's they don't get to vote. Like, this is your life. This is a good question. Allie says, I'm struggling with when to silently remove myself and when to be assertive. One of my friends, a flying monkey full of jealousy, says hurtful things directed at me. Okay, great question. And I think it's one of those things where so okay, in the last book club, if you saw that book club discussion, it was on the book The Respect Me Rules. And there was one line in there that just really resonated with me so much. And it was something along the lines of good people don't treat other good people with disdain, contempt, or hostility. And the reason that was so profound for me was the realization of if somebody's treating you in that kind of a way, there really is not a lot of benefit to being assertive or confronting them about it because either they're doing it on purpose, which is a problem, or they're doing it and they're not aware of it, which is also a problem. So, and that's kind of like the basics to being treated respectfully and with dignity and kind of the basics of adult behavior. So, I'm a big fan of kind of when knowing when to pick and choose our battles. With I've found with manipulative people, they just oh, it's just like trying to nail jello to a wall. You know, it's always an excuse. "Oh, I didn't know better. I didn't know I was hurting your feelings. Um, that didn't happen," or "You're making a big deal out of it," or "You're too sensitive." All of these things. It to me, that it's the if you're being treated with disdain, contempt, or hostility, then that for me, that's just deal breaker stuff, and there's no point in discussing it. Just like if somebody were to come to my house and a friend were to smash my window with a baseball bat, we're done. Like, we're done. If you're going to treat me with disdain, contempt, or hostility in ways that are physical or emotional, we're done. That's not how friends act towards other friends. So it's one thing to inadvertently hurt somebody's feelings and then to be fully accountable for that. But it's another thing to be jealous, to put you down, to that, friendship and the definition of friendship too, this might help, is it's a state of mutual trust and support. So I think it can also be very helpful to pay attention to the words that we're using because if the dynamic between you and this person is not one of a state of mutual trust and support, then it's not a friendship. It might be a person that's friendly with you from time to time. They might be more of an acquaintance, or they might just be a flat out enemy who's been somewhat friendly to you from time to time when they want or need something. So I think sometimes examining these definitions and examining how we're using these words to describe our experience can be really helpful. Okay, Guy and Jackie, and I think I kind of answered uh, your question with that too. Guy and Jackie says, "What is a real friend supposed to be? I'm serious. I'm 58 years old and I don't believe I have a true friend." Yeah, so it's that feeling of mutual trust and support. In a nutshell, it's being treated, with respect and dignity and kindness and compassion and consideration and that sense of open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication. So if somebody does get feelings hurt or, you know, if a situation does arise, because there is that feeling of mutual trust and support that this person isn't trying to be malicious towards you and that they're wanting to work towards some sort of solution and that they're accountable for their behavior. But yes, it's very common for a lot of people to get into their 40s, 50s, 60s, probably even 70s, 80s, and 90s and realize, oh my gosh, I think I'm not sure if I've ever really had a friend, like a true friend. I've had people that have used me. I've had people that have, what? Kitty cat. Sorry, I don't know. Um, you know, Templeton. Sorry. Uh, it's really common for them to kind of wonder, how can this possibly be? But if we've had this kind of, backwards idea of what friendship was, or we've been so used to kind of living on crumbs and settling our whole life, then yeah, it makes total sense. So I think going in the direction of mutual trust and support is a great direction to head in. Oh gosh. Let's see. People want to see people. Templeton, what are you doing, buddy? Ugh, they want to see. Go, gosh, they want to see you. Oh, he's such a beefcake. Yes. Okay. You can purr into the microphone. Yes. Diana says, I like not being a victim because I don't want to be helpless. I would rather have been a target because in no way did I ever dream I would be tangled up with a psychopath. Yes, I agree. I like the term target. Frankly, I think it's a lot of people have been victimized and they do identify with the term victim or survivor or target. And I think this is again where it kind of goes back to you defining your own experience. And if you feel comfortable with the term target, by all means, definitely use the term target. But I'm full in support too of people using the term victim or survivor as well. Okay, let's see. Uh, Guy and Jackie says Templeton wants to be heard. Yes, yes, he does. This cat is quite the beefcake. You're saying fat cats are irresistible. This cat is ridiculous. Let me tell you. Huh, buddy? Yeah. SG says we need a Templeton shirt. Yeah, this cat he's like the size of a raccoon. He's probably, I mean, he's huge. He's like 23 pounds. Guy and Jackie says, Dana, how did you become such a strong woman? I think it's one of these things when, you know, you become strong when you have no other choice. And there were many, many times, and there still are along the road where that have been full of self-doubt. And I mean, and I've said this before too, there was one time in particular, I just remember laying there thinking, you know, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know if I'm going to have a breakdown or a breakthrough, or if I'm just going to simply break. And that was a very, very scary kind of fork in the road to be at and just not know kind of what was going to become of me. And, but then I think making the decision that it starts with that. It really starts with just making that decision, setting a goal, setting a path of where you want to be and realizing, okay, I want to move forward. I'm going to use this for my highest and greatest good. And then digging deep and finding your fight. But it's been difficult every single step of the way. I mean, I've pretty much lost everything and starting over, which is a very hard pill to swallow, but like I was mentioning earlier, in many ways, it's exactly what I needed to have happen. And there's now, rebuilding my life, I've examined every single brick that I've been rebuilding with. So it's been a very good thing. So let me read some of these questions here. Um, okay, this is one from T, who says, Dana, my question is about the difference between hypervigilance after an abusive marriage to my narcissistic husband and actual red flags. I just started dating again about 2 months ago. I met a couple guys, but one in particular I started seeing exclusively, but by default, because I didn't care for the others that I'd met. And so those didn't result in a second or third date, as it did with this person. We started to see each other twice a week and talked every day. While it was a stark contrast from my ex, with texting all day long and massive love bombing, it still somehow started to morph into a pseudo relationship. I expressed to this person that I insisted on a friendship first, and I let him know it would be quite some time before I would engage in physical intimacy, all with the end goal of building a friendship first so as to not get caught up in all of the feel good chemicals that go along with physical intimacy. He did not balk, and he said he understood completely and said that everything would be at my pace and my comfort level. By about our eighth or ninth date, he seemed less okay with not knowing where I lived. I told him from the first date I would be meeting him at places until I felt comfortable with letting him know where I lived. When I say seemed, that's where my question comes in. There were a couple of times he asked, "What's the plan?" regarding our upcoming date for the evening. When I would reply and say something like, "Oh, well, how about you meet me at 7 and meet me at 7 up by Home Depot or wherever," he started saying things like, "Okay, that's what I was trying to find out, if I was going to pick you up or not." I stated from the get go that I wouldn't be ready for that for quite some time. And my thinking is that I would come straight out and ask, or even more likely, I would wait for the person to inform me that they're now ready to let me know where they lived, not be intermittently checking to see if they changed their mind. When he said this came across to me as boundary pushing. The other thing that came across as pushy is at least 75% of our phone conversations, he would end by saying things like, "Don't stay up late and watch things on YouTube or whatever, or get some sleep." Then the most recent thing was that I elected to stay in one night and told him I was planning a night of self pampering, including soaking in the tub. He texted me later in the night and asked simply, "How was your bath?" First of all, I find this an odd thing to start a conversation with. Gave me the feeling that he didn't believe I was staying home. And when I replied and said I haven't gotten around to it yet, his reply was, "Well, you can't take one now. I mean, it'll keep you awake." Again, this felt really controlling and boundary pushing. I was puzzled by this statement and I thought it was rather odd. I replied by saying, "Well, actually, it doesn't have that effect on me." Then I followed it up with, immediately checking wait, immediately checking his reason for saying this to me, wondering if it was just perhaps a personal experience or if it was actually an attempt to control me with no real basis for saying it. So I said, "Does it affect, wait, does it have that effect on you?" To which he replied, "I wouldn't know. I don't take baths." So I was more puzzled and I asked, "Well, then that then what made you say it would keep me awake?" To which he replied, "Oh, it's just what I've heard. Weird, weird, weird." Kitty cat. Hold on. My BS meter was going off loud and clear. I highly doubt this mid 40 something year old man who doesn't take baths has been collecting data from others on whether or not baths keep people awake. Also, the first week that I was talking to him, and we'd been out once, I was going to attend a concert later in the week, and he asked me the day ahead of time what I was going to wear. This struck me as odd because it wasn't a situation where he was going to attend with me, and it's not like he wanted to dress in a line with how I was. This was simply an investigative type question, followed up with the quick question of, "Are you dressing casual or dressy?" It just weirded me out because he had no basis for needing to know what I'd be wearing. And my only conclusion with that was that he was exhibiting some early controlling or insincere behavior. I know that these things are small, but they were enough to cause me to break off the relationship. Well, that and the fact that we weren't on the same playing field spiritually, which I assessed would be a fundamental difference that would tear us apart. But aside from the spirituality aspect, which was just a decision made on my part based on my what I'm looking for list, what do you think of these instances? Do they suggest a controlling character? For the record, I found no additional narcissistic type characteristics during the short time we were dating. And our parting conversation when I ended, things went remarkably well. I actually hung up the phone wondering if I'd made a mistake and if he's a far better guy than I was giving him credit for. Sorry this is so long. I just wanted to be detailed. Am I being too vigilant or do these things speak to you as deal breakers? Help. This was the healthiest situation I've found myself in when it comes to dating. I want to know that I'm not so scarred that I overreacted here. Thanks for your help. Big hugs. Your help is absolutely invaluable. Well, thank you. I'm glad you think that. Okay, here's what I think about this. His behavior is controlling. It's definitely micromanaging, and that would drive me up a wall too. So even if he was a good guy with good intentions, I think anybody that starts kind of taking on this kind of micromanaging role, it's exhausting and it's draining. And you know, like you said, you don't owe anybody an explanation, and I wouldn't want that either. Somebody asking, well, you know, what are you wearing, and you know, you telling me when to go to bed and what to watch on YouTube or when to not watch YouTube. Even if it was his way of trying to come across as caring, it's controlling and it's smothering. So I don't blame you for not wanting to put up with that. I wouldn't have I don't know if I've ever really, I've never dated anybody that's been controlling like that. So my father is very micromanaging like that, and I know with my dad it comes from a good place, but it can be smothering and exhausting and infuriating. So yeah, it's still a problem. I think, and here's the thing too. At the end of the day, you are doing so many things right. You're taking things slow. I like that you were straightforward with this guy and said, you know, hey, I'm not looking to get intimate anytime soon. I really feel like we need to let's meet at a public location. And actually, let me touch on that real quick too. If you meet somewhere, it can be a good idea to just meet there. So instead of meeting at Home Depot and then you hop in his car or he hops in your car, to truly just meet, like, I'll meet you at the restaurant, I'll meet you at the concert or whatever, um, until you feel comfortable getting into a car with somebody or finding out where you live. And so I think good job with healthy boundaries, good job with, you know, being assertive with him and letting him know, because I think there's I think a lot of people have this expectation that things are going to get physical by a certain date, and you know, if he's not on the same page with that, you know, it's I think it's just good. It's good to respect your time and his time and energy and emotions and all of that. So I think good job with that. And whatever you're feeling should be a deal breaker, this is 100% on you. So what is a deal breaker for one person might not be for somebody else. So for example, you might go out with somebody and they might have 3 or 4 or 5 drinks at the bar. And maybe that's a deal breaker for you, but maybe for somebody that drinks that on a regular basis, that wouldn't be a deal breaker. It might be a deal breaker for them if the person didn't drink or didn't drink that much. So even if it's not necessarily that this person is an abusive, you know, narcissist, if there's something about them, I mean, he could be really into baseball, let's say, for example. And if you really are not a fan of sports, then that might not be a good mismatch, or that might not be a good match. Do you see what I'm saying? It just depends. If you're really big on playing the piano and he likes quiet time, that's not probably not going to work. So it's just kind of knowing yourself well enough, knowing your life well enough, knowing kind of what's important for you, and what is flexible, what's workable for you, and what's deal breaker stuff. And there's no right or wrong answer for this. It's such an individual thing. But I want you to know, I agree with you that even though those little tiny kind of micromanaging things, that would make me nuts too. You know, so yeah. Missouri Cowboy says, laughter is healing. Thank you for all being here. Well, thank you. And thank you for the live stream donation. I agree. Laughter is fantastic. Bill says, it's been a year and a half since our divorce, discarded numerous times prior. She remarried her dead ex husband's cousin 3 months after our divorce. Why do I still pine over her in the marriage? Well, I think, you know, marriage and divorce, it's a big part of a person's life, and it's not a light switch that we flip on and flip off with the signing of divorce papers. And it's been a year and a half. That's really not, I know it might feel like a long time, but it's really not in the grand scheme of things. And especially if you are riding this roller coaster of highs and lows, there's all of this intensity and these trauma bonds, and there's just so much more to work through than there would be if it had been kind of a quote unquote normal marriage or a quote unquote normal divorce. So understandable. And then the fact that she married family, even though this person's somewhat distant family, that's added salt in the wound. And it takes time. What does help though is if this relationship, which this is very common, divorce, death, anything like this will leave a void in a person's life. It can really help to get busy trying to fill that void with positive things. It'll make you kind of miss her and think about her and that relationship less. So I'm a big fan. I know you've heard me talk about it before. Meetup.com, I think, is absolutely fantastic. So I strongly encourage you to look around in your area for some different groups out there. It's a really great way to meet people, for friends, for trying new things. Uh, and there's all kinds of groups out there, all kinds of groups out there, all kinds of groups out there. You can, people that get together around food or adventure or camping or Reiki or, cooking or book club or you name it. So it can be a really, really great way. I think too, once you can kind of get that validation that there is life after divorce, and you start meeting some just kind of new people, kind of get that new blood going in your life and new hobbies, and you're relating to new people and new ways around new experiences, it just really helps to kind of get your brain going in a different direction. Great point. The Lilith says you could even start your own meetup. Yes. And I forget how much it is. I think it's like $12 a month or something for you to start your own meetup group. And Meetup actually just started doing this really cool thing where if you go on there and you search for things, so let's say you're really big into, I don't know, camping, right? Um, if other people have been searching for those types of groups, they'll tell you, like 67 other people in like Raleigh, North Carolina are also interested in camping. So then you kind of know, okay, if I start a group, there's going to be interest for it. There's already 67 people waiting for somebody to start a group based around this. And it can really be a lot of fun. It can really kind of force you to also get out and explore areas. So you're putting meetups together. So, hey, George is here. So, welcome, George. I know. I still need to get the forum updated. Just FYI. I know. I know. Uh, yeah. Free to Be Me says, remember what I did when I left, Dana? I volunteered and I got busy with doing volunteer work and even started her own narcissistic support group for a while. Yeah, I'm a big fan of people too. Join like a dozen different groups. You never know. Sometimes groups where you're like, "Oh man, I don't know if I really am like, you know, that hardcore that I want to do like this outdoor adventure group." But you never like they might have something that's more mellow or something that's kind of more your speed. So it's you don't have to go to any of the events, but it'll let you know what events they have planned. Then you just kind of RSVP to them. Um, Missouri Cowboy says, Dana or Free to Be Me or anyone, what are some pointers when attending a church? Oh, that's a big question. I think it depends on the person. For me, it's kind of, I guess, the same type of thing I would look for in a therapist or a friend or any situation really. So it'd be some place that I feel comfortable with, that I feel supported, that I feel empowered. I'm more spiritual than religious. So when I was going through all this, I was brand new to Michigan. I didn't know anybody here. I didn't even know where the grocery store was. It was really awful. And I had joined the oh, what's the term? Unitarian church. And I found a lot of peace there because for me that was kind of my speed. It was a bunch of people of kind of all walks of life, all faiths, kind of coming together for the common goal of love and peace. That really resonated with me. Some people, if you really, if you're Catholic or you're, really into the kind of that specific denomination, I would encourage you, find a church that resonates with you. And sometimes if a person has to go to a few of them to really kind of get a feel of, do I like the minister or the priest, or kind of do I like the vibe of the congregation, or do I like their interpretation of this particular spiritual text? And a lot of it's trial and error. Um, Even though I don't identify as being Christian, when I was going through all of this, I found a lot of peace from listening to Joel Osteen. I think he's very uplifting. Joyce Meyer is too. And, I think it's just kind of whatever resonates with you at this point in your life. It's kind of moving in that direction. So the survivalist says, I'm still on relationship break. I'm not trying to date anyone, just working, growing plants, prepping, and my family. That sounds very interesting. And I would be curious. I don't know if you have a blog or if you do videos about that, but I would love to learn more about that. I lived off the grid for a couple years and in a house with no electricity or running water, and I absolutely loved it. We had water storage tanks and it was just very simple and I absolutely loved it there. But that's kind of just on the fringe of what you're doing. So I would be curious to know more. Oh, that's a good question. Astra asks, do you think most victims of narcissists need medication or therapy after abuse? I think it depends. I would say the vast majority do. It's intense. I mean, your whole life is blown apart, and especially if you don't know what happened. And especially if you're feeling like, I'm not sure if I just lost the best thing that happened to me or if I dodged a bullet and lost the worst thing that ever happened to me. And there's all of this confusion and pain and emotional devastation and depression and anxiety and sleepless nights and night terrors and all of this, the kind of PTSD that goes along with it. And then the person, if they're not aware of this, that this is happening, then they really feel like I'm losing my mind. Why do I feel hypervigilant? Why do I feel like I can't trust people? Why do I want to stay inside and isolate over a relationship? Over a quote unquote bad breakup. There's just all of this confusion that comes with that. So I think one of the most healing things for people is that validation and clarity. But even still, very common for people to want to get on, to need this additional support, whether it's through medication or through therapy. And again, with therapy, it's one of those things. It's kind of that old saying, in any given field, there's 10% of people that really should not be in it. Like they just are awful at it. Then there's 10% that are worth their weight in gold. And then there's 80% that are somewhere in between. And so it's the same with finding a therapist. And if you can find a good one who gives you that validation and that clarity and that support, that's what a person needs after they go through abuse is somebody to help kind of explain what happened and to help kind of guide them through all of this confusion that they're experiencing. So I think just saying, a blanket statement that all therapy is helpful or all therapists are helpful, that is definitely not true. Just like all medication isn't helpful. It's finding the right medication or the right therapist or and it can be a process. Jamie says, how long does it take to break the trauma bond? I was with him for 18 years and escaped 3 months ago. I'm so impatient. I just want to stop thinking about him and missing him. That's a great question. And everybody, those bonds break for different people at different times. Um, I think one of the biggest things that can help kind of accelerate that process is to really truly see the situation clearly. So if a person's finding themselves thinking about him or especially missing him, that is a slippery slope into like nostalgia and all of the cognitive dissonance that goes along with it. And when that cognitive dissonance sets in, it sets in like a fog. And then the person often wonders, well, maybe they weren't a narcissist. Maybe this was normal. Was this a good relationship or a bad relationship? Maybe this could be saved. Did I overreact? It's all of this kind of introspection and questioning. Is it me? Is it them? Was this a normal relationship? Was this an abusive relationship? Like, I don't know. What really helps is to see the situation crystal clear. So, writing down all of the reasons this relationship ended, all of the rotten things that they did. And when you find yourself missing him, go back and read that list. Or you can make a video on your phone or on your computer or what have you, where you're just talking to yourself and you're reading that list out to yourself. This is why this relationship will never work. And reminding yourself of that clarity as often as you need to, because people tend to, it takes longer to heal if they're not seeing the situation clearly. And that fog of cognitive dissonance, it just like any other fog, it raises and then it lowers and then it raises and then it lowers. And this is why people oftentimes, it takes them 7 times of experiencing tremendous amounts of pain before they finally leave for good. And they're like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. So get get crystal clear with yourself. Oh, interesting. Long Long hanging cap says everyone should see The Keepers to see how narcissists abuse, murder, and control in the church. That sounds very interesting. I'll have to check that out. And too, Jamie, 18 years is a long time to be with somebody. And it takes time. It just takes time. It just takes time to process all of that and to get a different routine down and to get different hobbies and to just really kind of separate your life and to rebuild a life that's all yours. So 3 months out is your I know it feels like a really long time and that you want it to be over with, but pace yourself. It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. Again, big fan of meetup.com. It can be a really great way to just realize there is life after divorce, there is life after a narcissist. You can go out, you can meet new people, you can do fun things. This is still Life is still, happiness is still available for you and for anybody, even though it might not feel like it right now. You're right out of the storm. I mean, 3 months out, you're right out from it. So try to just triple up on your self-care and, just I know it sounds maybe kind of woo-woo, but just give yourself a big hug. Like you've been through a lot. So, it's gonna take some doing to rebuild a life. Kevin says patience. Ugh, I need more patience. Oh, so do I. Something I struggle with so much. Elboz says, I'm running out of patience. It's so discouraging. Though, it's a learning process. You guys, you're going to be on the other side of this and you're going to have so much personal growth that comes from this in so many ways that you would have never expected in a million years. And you can and will be stronger for it. It's that saying, if you find yourself walking through hell, you keep walking. You can get through it. It's a day at a time, it's a moment at a time, it's a step at a time. Shara says, I really want to sign up for boxing classes after I'm free. Yeah, I like that. I think that would be a very empowering thing to do. Kickboxing can be good too. Oftentimes, if cost is a factor, if you have a local like YMCA, or even oftentimes some martial arts places will do classes for people that have been through an abusive relationship. So it might even be worth calling them and seeing if they offer some sort of discount. But the YMCA, affordable group classes like that. Okay, let's see. Lauren, that's interesting. Lauren says, this is a serious question for anyone willing to answer it. Every time I try to work so I can break free from my narcissistic parents, I get sick for a few months and I have to stop. Any ideas on how to deal with this? I think the question I would have with that is are you getting sick with the same type of sickness every time? And if so, what do you think that's about? Because if there's a pattern there, my guess would be our brain and our bodies are really complex things. And sometimes what feels like coincidence is oftentimes like kind of different defense mechanisms. Because, and just hear me out here, but it could be that, okay, a job represents that first step towards freedom, which at first sounds like, yeah, freedom, this is really empowering. But then there's that deeper part of you that might realize Yeah. Okay. Then the next step of that is going to be this inevitable, uncomfortable, tense conversation that could potentially, end a relationship, that could be very overwhelming. And because change is always scary, even if we know we need it and want it, even if you're being controlled and miserable at home, there's always that certain degree of comfort in the familiar. And it can be really intimidating and overwhelming for a person to leave an abusive situation, whether it's with their parents or their significant other, and to start a new life. So it might be worth doing some journaling around to see, okay, where is this block coming from? And to kind of develop a plan. So if it is anxiety based, to start thinking about, okay, well then how am I going to handle leaving, eventually moving out? And having this conversation, because if I'm kind of thinking if you can address that component and at least get some ideas down, it'll help you to feel more reassured about taking those next few steps. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if those that sickness, kind of this built-in excuse, really goes away. That's my guess. Let's see. Lauren says, I never knew I had a mitral valve prolapse until I went to the doctor for my heart racing all the time. I think the situation lowered my immunity and strength. Yeah, stress is, man, it doesn't get the credit that it deserves. It really is at the root cause. It just exacerbates everything, everything. Physical symptoms, emotional symptoms, anxiety, depression, sleeplessness, disorganization, ADD, pain, fibromyalgia, lupus, inflammation, all kinds of stuff. Stress really does a number on us. And yeah, it lowers immunity. I mean, you look at people that are in an abusive situation or oppressive situation of any kind, they look significantly older than they are. They feel significantly older than they are. And then you see pictures of them a year, 2, 3 years out, and it's like their aging is reversing and they're looking healthier and more. It's like that life force is really coming back. And we so oftentimes underestimate stress, especially if we've been living in stress at a constant level for a long time. We don't even realize it. It's just kind of our new normal to walk on eggshells and to be upset all the time and to kind of wait for the other shoe to drop. It's a very stressful way to live. Banaz, great question. Says, can you be so strong to put boundaries and still be able to stay in a difficult dynamic until you move out? Yeah, I think that can for sure be the challenge if it depends. I mean, if you've got a really controlling, domineering, abusive person, it's going to be a challenge to set boundaries, and odds are they're probably going to steamroll over them. And the thing with boundaries is boundaries really need to have a consequence. And if you're not in the position in order to give a consequence, which would normally be like, you either treat me with dignity and respect or I'm leaving, then you're just continually trying to assert yourself, which is as effective of kind of screaming into the wind. So it's really difficult to set boundaries if there's not going to be some sort of actionable consequence there. Yeah, Benjamin is saying, yeah, my coworkers noticed how much younger I look after a couple of years. Yeah, it's a big difference, and it's not just necessarily leaving these kinds of relationships, but it's finding things that nourish you, finding kind of the right soil for you to grow. And And this is where it gets fun because this is where it's such an individual process, figuring out who are you? Because this is really what your life is all about. I mean, you're here on this planet and there's a skill set that is completely unique to you. You might be gosh, really great at organizing or really great or really drawn to religion or spirituality or really passionate about animals or about architecture or fashion design or you name it or music or football or what have you, and it's this is you, like there's only one you, and the whole all of us, like, we need you to come alive and be you. And it's so cool when people start to kind of just blossom after these relationships and they start to reconnect with these lost parts of themselves, and they bloom. And that's my favorite part of doing all this is hearing from people of, they started cooking again, they just love to bake, or they really enjoy playing soccer, or you know what have you. They just start to get into their own again and build that authentic life. Yeah, Astra was saying that her therapist said that she might be looking for some of these types of relationships subconsciously. And you might be. If a person, we're all drawn to by and large to what's familiar. So if a person, actually, let me take that back. People tend to do one of two things. The default is we tend to go towards what's familiar, unless a person has that very clear realization of, oh no, I am not doing that. Then they tend to do the exact opposite. So, for example, you could have two children that grow up in an abusive home. One child grows up to become abusive to their spouse. The other child grows up and never hits their spouse. And if you were to ask both of those children, why are you the way that you are? The child that hits their spouse would probably say, well, you know what? I grew up with this. My mom or my dad, this is what they did, you know, and look at me, I turned out fine, right? They'd probably justify it. The other child would probably say, you know what? I grew up in a house where mom or dad was really abusive. And I swore to myself I would never be that way and I would never marry anybody like that. And they never did. So I think so much of it's just awareness and realizing this is a problem. And now that you know, okay, this is what abusive behavior is, this is what manipulative behavior is, this is how it goes down. Once you're aware of it, then you can decide, is this something that I want in my life? And you can make that very concerted effort to be like, when these friendships or relationships or work environments start taking that kind of left turn, you're like, nope, not for me. But for a lot of people, especially if they're used to the highs and lows, it takes a while for them to realize what's problematic. I mean, if a person's grown up in a den of dysfunction, like so many of us have, right? It can take a while to figure out kind of what's problematic because so many things were problematic. And and if a person was in an abusive relationship later on in life and they had a lot of these highs and lows, they might really be confusing this level of intensity with sincerity and this love bombing with love and the controlling behavior with caring. So a lot of these concepts, they're only a few degrees away from each other. And so it can be very difficult, especially when a person's in the thick of things, to see them for what they are. And um, which is why I think it's so helpful to try to nourish yourself as much as possible and to practice these skill sets and practice spotting problematic behavior, to practice all this before you dive into a relationship. Again, another reason I'm a big fan of meetup.com, because then you can start making some friends and see what kind of friendships am I holding on to? You know, am I seeing problematic behavior? Kind of like what needs fine tuning here? What needs some adjustment? Even if you just go to just people watch, being able to spot, okay, that's problematic behavior, and here's what kind of problematic behavior it is, and here's how I'm feeling around it, and kind of just trying this new skill set out because it really is. It's a totally new skill set. And it just takes it's like learning to ride a bike. You know, you're gonna fall a few times. It's all part of it. Doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. It just means you're learning a new skill set and it's just gonna take some practice. Oh, that's very insightful. Yeah, Astra says it's confusing to try to understand how somebody that you thought loved you could be so cold and callous, dark even to their own children. I feel like he gray rocked us. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah. Well, when you're dealing with somebody that has, low empathy and low degrees of kind of emotional intelligence, really, they're just this this is their personality and kind of wherever they go, there they are. So I think it can be helpful because it's so hard because we all tend to go around through life thinking that other people are like us and that other people have the same must feel similar emotions to the similar level of depth that we do. And it's not until we encounter these kinds of relationships when we encounter somebody that we're like, I did not realize that some people just truly don't attach to other people. Like it's just so foreign to us because we haven't really come across it. And we tend to think, given enough time and understanding and love and rehab or religion or therapy, that they'll come around, that they'll somehow be able to kind of increase their capacity for empathy or remorse or, you know, morality. And the reality is not everybody's like us. And, our their 100% that they're able to give in a relationship might only be our 10%, and that no amount of therapy or religion or love or anything is going to change that. Like if that's all a person has to give, that's all that they have to give. And and then also some people don't attach to their children, they don't love their children, they are sadistic and twisted and evil and enjoy hurting their children. So it's just so foreign to us because we don't think that way. And it takes a while to truly understand that that's a thing. It's just when it's not even on our radar, then we don't see it. I forget what war it was. I was reading this recently and I found it fascinating. It might have been when Christopher Columbus, I could be way off on this, when Christopher Columbus was coming to uh, the North America, and the Native Americans were seeing the ships. They had never seen a ship before like that, and they couldn't process it. And so they just didn't see him because it didn't compute as to this could be a thing. And it wasn't until I forget, there was, one leader that realized there's something coming. It's isn't that interesting? So even though they had, and it makes sense though. I mean, it's like if we were to see a dragon or something that we think doesn't really exist, and we see it coming, it's going to take us a while for it to actually process. It's the same with emotional manipulators or people that we just kind of don't think would exist in our world. Like we know that they're out there, but they're like in jail or it happens to somebody else. But when it happens to us, it takes us a while for that to fully compute. Jen says, how did we mistake this for love? It just makes me feel like an idiot. Like, how did I not know he wasn't in real love with me? I think it depends. Everybody's experience is different with this, but again, I think most people, especially if you experience a lot of like love bombing and intensity, or even just attention out of the gate, we just tend to think that other people are like us. And because abuse, it tends to happen slowly and gradually over time as the abuser becomes more like kind of secure. They get more comfortable in the relationship because, like, everybody's on their best behavior for at least the first 30 days. And then you start to see this kind of, people become more comfortable in any relationship. But with abusive people, when they become kind of more comfortable, that's when the abuse starts. And because it doesn't tend to be a constant thing, sort of like this gal who was going on a few dates with this guy, and she's like, all of us, he's asking me about what I'm wearing, and she's like, I feel like I'm being interviewed or grilled by him. It tends to start off like that. It's like these kind of little things that are easy to justify and think, well, maybe that's not that controlling, or maybe that's a little off, but I don't want to ruin a good thing. And then it's, boy, this person yelled at me, or there's kind of these subtle put downs about my weight or my height or my gender or my nationality or my religion, or, and then it tends to be stuff that we can kind of gloss over, thinking, oh, well, maybe they were raised differently. Maybe it was their childhood. Maybe it's because they're from another country. We're looking for reasons to try to make sense out of what we're experiencing. And oftentimes, a lot of this problematic behavior is peppered in with a lot of ideal behavior. There's tends to be like a lot of good times. They might have a great sense of humor. You might enjoy spending time with them. You might really enjoy just sleeping next to somebody or cuddling or going to movies, or there might be certain things about them that you like. And that's the confusing thing about these relationships, is it tends to be this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde type thing. Or if there's not such a kind of stark contrast in the relationship, it could be this really ideal relationship, and then with periods of like double life kind of stuff surfacing. And either way, if you're seeing both Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or if you're only seeing Dr. Jekyll, but then you find out what Mr. Hyde's been up to, either way, it's really problematic. And it just takes a while for a person to realize that this is not normal and that this is not love. Because, too, there's a lot of people in society. This is actually the second book that I'm working on that really goes in depth about this. I did a video on this a while back. I call them thought holes. And thought holes are like potholes. Like what a pothole does to your vehicle, a thought hole will do to your thinking. So like when we're driving along and we hit a pothole, we often don't see it coming, right? And it just damages our car. A thought hole, if we don't see it coming and we hit one, it really can damage our thinking, and it can cause us to really go off track. So there's no shortage of well-intended bad advice out there. And so if we're kind of in this confusing relationship and we're hitting these thought holes from ourselves or from other people or from a therapist or a spiritual advisor or what have you, and they're saying, oh, it takes two people to make a relationship work, or you need to examine your part in things, or God doesn't like divorce, or true love conquers all, or all of these like toxic messages around relationships, which might be good in theory, assuming that there's no abuse involved. But when abuse is involved, it's poison. It's it can't be fixed. If there's 1% poison in your water, it's still gonna kill you. A relationship doesn't have to be 100% poison in order to kill you. 1% will do the job. So, but because a person too, when they're in an abusive relationship, there's often no witness to their reality. And so if they're reaching out for help and they're like, something's really off, and this person, is kind of commenting about my weight or my appearance or my education, and I feel like I'm kind of, am I being too sensitive? And then they're not really sure, and then they're looking outside for validation. But if other people are not picking up on the fact that it's abuse, and they're kind of feeling like, well, maybe it's just me, I'm just too sensitive, and so then they stay stuck in that until things get progressively worse, and that they experience enough pain that they finally get to the place where they can't handle it anymore. Uh, let's see. Let me stop the chat for a second here. Allie says, Dana, what about the righteous anger when getting angry deep inside about all of the evil deeds they've done? Should I calm myself like exercising or let myself just be angry? I'm not sure what to do. I'm afraid it consumes me. This is such a great question and such a valid question, and something that I think everybody experiences. Everything, like the anger, the feeling of, I don't know what to do with this anger. I'm scared it'll consume me. Do I sit with it, or do I try to push it aside? And I think that you might find this is a very, again, a very unique answer. So it's going to be kind of whatever you're comfortable doing. Um, because it is a lot of righteous anger. And, when a person has been victimized, when they've been used, abused, exploited, or neglected, they're going to be upset about that. That's an appropriate way to feel, because you experienced something that was wildly inappropriate. I'm always concerned about people that don't feel anger. They might start off feeling numb and then move to anger, or depression and then move to anger. But anger is definitely a big stage in healing. And um, you might find, because it can be very overwhelming, because sometimes that anger is not just anger, it's like full out like rage that can be almost like homicidal levels of rage. And that's scary when you're feeling that level of intensity. And so I think it can help to burn off as much of that energy as possible. Take a kickboxing class, run, burn some of it off before you try to sit with it and explore it. You'll find it, I think, a lot more manageable. And and again, this is just going to be you kind of, this is the part of like working through it all. So you'll figure out, okay, there might be times in the middle of the night where you wake up angry and you're like, I can't really go for a run, or I'm not feeling like getting out of bed and burning some of this off. To figure out, okay, how can I start working through this? Like journaling, tape recording yourself can be a great thing to do. I did this a lot too. Your voice memo thing on your phone, with if you're driving to and from work and you have a 20, 30, 60-minute commute, to just talk. Today is August 2nd, 2017. I'm driving to work, having a mix of emotions right now. I don't know. I'm having a lot of anger, working on trying to figure out how to get through this anger, really struggling today. And it's the stream of consciousness, and you're just recording it and you're letting it all go. Maybe you save those recordings, maybe you delete them. Um, maybe you sit with that anger, maybe you go hit the gym instead. It's kind of whatever you're feeling that you want to do in that moment. There really is, there's no kind of right or wrong way with how you're processing it, as long as you're not doing anything like that self-harm, or hurting yourself or hurting somebody else, but trying to channel that in like the most constructive way, and just realizing it's healthy and reasonable and good that you feel this way, you know but yeah, it's still intense. Okay, let's see. The next question I have here is, let's see. Okay, this is from Carol. Carol says, Hi, Dana. I posted this question on Wednesday night, but I could not stay for the whole session, so I'm not sure if you got to it. My ex's new supply recently and abruptly became his old supply. They had been together for about 2 years following the discard of me after a 28-year marriage. She had become his flying monkey and totally bought the smear campaign that I was a psycho, a terrible mom, and so on. He gave her my cell number and she left nasty accusatory messages after she learned I had stalked her Facebook page. Fast forward, and he is now with his new target who is now doing to the old supply what she did to me to a T. He even gave the new one the old one's phone number. Anyway, my replacement supply messaged me out of the blue last week to apologize for being so rude to me for all of the damage she had done to both of our families. And she said I hoped I could forgive her. She is devastated over how fast he moved on when they were so in love. She now sees that there was truth to what I had said about him and is coming to grips with the fact that their relationship was a lie. My question, and I'm sorry it took so long to get to it, is it okay for me to communicate with her? It does make me feel better to be validated, even though I feel that since it was more than just an apology, and since she is asking questions about certain things to bring reality into her experience, she is doing it for her own gain too. I'm asking questions as well, and I'm happy to tell her that such and such was a lie and giving her a bit of the whole kind of narcissist 101. And she's becoming enlightened as well. But is this okay or is this healthy? Again, this is one of those things. It's gonna depend on how you feel about this. So here, let me tell you some of my concerns. Here are some factors that I would consider if I were you. Number one, is you talking to her putting you in harm's way, putting you or your children in harm's way in any way, shape, or form? If so, then I would stop talking to her. Number two, is this bad for you or your mental health or the mental health of your children in any way, shape, or form? If so, then I would cut off contact. The added concern to that would be how, because these types of people, narcissistic people, they have a pipeline of supply. They tend to do things to kind of keep the door open. And my concern would be, is she really done? Or is there a solid chance that he's going to text her or call her up and try to, hoover her basically and try to suck her back in? And is she going to fall for it? So that's always the risk that we run when we talk to the new partner or even the old partner. And so I think whatever you talk to her about, realize that because narcissists don't tend to ever stay gone forever, that they do tend to come back, that whatever you are telling her, there's a very solid chance that it's going to get back to him. So I would just be aware of that. And also, I would, something else to take into consideration is, at what point, because I get it. I mean, I so get it that it can be so nice to have that validation and that clarity, but then also to realize, okay, this, if this person's going to move into more of like an acquaintance level, you really want to have more in common than you both dated a abusive person. So, is there kind of, where is she and within the realm of like, is she in your inner circle? Is she kind of like a few rings out? Is she at an acquaintance level? How long would you want to keep communication open with her? Because it can be very draining to continually, it can be validating, but it can also be very draining to continue to have these conversations. So, just something to kind of pay attention to how you feel. And if you're feeling like this isn't like, I just kind of want to move on. I want to move on to the next chapter. I've said my piece. She said her piece. I'm glad we made amends, but I think now it's kind of time that we like go our separate ways. I think you'll know when you get there, but those are just some things to kind of think about. Debbie asks, did anyone experience manic behavior from the narcissist in their life? I experienced what at the time I would have called it manic behavior, but kind of knowing what I know now, it was manipulative behavior, and it was more attention seeking, and it was their level of impulsivity and just complete recklessness and disregard for themselves and for others. So, not to say that, narcissists can't also be manic, because some can also be bipolar or, you know, have manic episodes with their behavior. But I think it kind of depends. I guess it depends on kind of what you're experiencing. And was there drug use involved, and, what else might have been going on? Banaz says, well, what exactly is manic behavior? Manic behavior tends to be, it tends to kind of run in cycles of extremes. So, a person, they might clean a lot or be hypersexual or stay awake for, maybe only getting an hour or two of sleep a night, if that. Or they might have these really kind of very noticeable changes in personality. But generally with mania, if it's true, like if we're talking like chemically, like mental illness kind of mania, it's generally kind of it's treated, and it's like more like like kind of modulated, I guess, or what's the word I'm looking for, kind of evened out with medication. um Narcissism, they tend their behavior to, one of the defining features of narcissism and kind of antisocial personality disorder and even borderline personality disorder is that it's erratic, dramatic, and emotional. So those are kind of the three main features, which also tend to be very common with mania. But but for them, it's not mental illness, it's personality. And so medication doesn't impact, it doesn't change anything. Like it's brain activity, it's personality, it's nothing that, you know it can definitely be made worse with like drugs or alcohol, but it's the core is personality stuff. Yeah. Missouri Cowboy says, I thought the manic behavior was a distraction to exhaust me. The word salad, the mind at mind bending speeds, everything designed to daze and confuse me and make me easier to manipulate. Yeah, it definitely can be. So, but a person they can be mentally ill, and they can also have a personality disorder. It's very common when I think it's very rare that a person just has like one thing going on. Most most people, especially with personality disorders, they tend to have multiple, there tends to be, you know, PTSD and, borderline personality disorder and, you know, like, possibly an anxiety disorder or depression, or most people have more than one thing that's going on with them, especially when you're talking like in the mental health field arena. Okay, Debbie was saying, yeah, mine was into stock market gambling. Oh my goodness. Lost $300,000 on marijuana. Yeah. So, I mean, and it's hard to say with them because it could be impulsivity, it could be mania, it's so hard to tell kind of what can really be driving that behavior. Um, I mean, either way you dice it, it's a problem. But yeah, that kind of extremes, I think there's kind of this thought out there, that people with kind of these low empathy type personality disorders, they tend to be really thrill seeking, and they tend to be very reckless because they don't experience, or at least it's thought they don't really experience emotions in the same way that the rest of us do. And so, and because they tend to be reckless and impulsive and they don't really have remorse, I mean, it's like they don't really have a brake pedal. They're just kind of always, it's just that instant gratification. And that's a problem for a person at any age, but especially when they're an adult and they have adult responsibilities and they're all over the place. Yeah, addiction's very common too with narcissists and sociopaths. Gambling, porn, alcoholism, drug addiction. I forget where I read it. I read somewhere once that something along the lines of like 80% of alcoholics, um, alcohol and addiction in general tend to also register as like antisocial personality disorder. And I would agree with that. That's kind of what I saw when I was working as a psychiatric nurse. So it's just very common. I mean, like I said, a lot of people have multiple things going on with them. Hope says being a shopaholic. Yeah. I mean, that spending, and that can be kind of that grandiosity, like spending beyond their means, or uh, just there's no forward thought. They're just really like kind of in that moment of they want what they want when they want it. And they have that emotional maturity of a child where it's impulsive and it's immediate gratification. And and oftentimes and they're manipulative. So they tend to get out of it. Like if they rack up a bunch of debt, especially if they're with a partner who's more of like the parent in the relationship, who's trying to put them on a budget and trying to manage finances and do debt consolidation and refinance the house, and who's continually doing damage control for them. There's no reason for them to do anything different because they don't have consequences. They get to do whatever they want to do and they keep getting bailed out. Let's see. Missouri Cowboy says, "What about meth addiction? I was naive, yet discovering meth addiction is a plague here in the Ozarks." Yes, meth is a huge problem, I've heard, especially in the Ozarks. It's a huge problem everywhere, frankly. And it's drugs, it's one of those things. There's a saying out there that we're only as healthy as our coping mechanisms. And I really like that because there's so much truth in that. And so if a person is trying to numb themselves or to artificially create a certain emotion, and the only way that they know how to do it is or they're really like compelled to move towards alcohol or to move towards certain drugs or sex or spending, um, you know, like that's the thing. Like it's not like the alcohol that's necessarily the problem or the porn that's the problem. It's the behavior. Like that's a symptom of the larger problem. It's kind of what's going on there that's having this compulsive behavior that they're trying to suppress. So, and until they get that, I mean, this is when you kind of get people that are like dry drunks, right? Or people that quit some sort of habit like a gambling or porn or whatever, and then they're just sitting there, and then they tend to pick up several other addictions. I mean, that's kind of the ongoing like joke that and there's truth to it, like that addictions tend to run in threes. So it's very rare that a person's just an alcoholic or just a gambler or just addicted to porn. It tends to be it's alcohol or cigarettes or spending or porn or you know drugs or they tend to really run in threes. And it's because if it's a coping mechanism, most people have more than one way to cope. And it's interesting if you kind of think about your own behavior in terms of like, well, how do I go about coping? uh, we all have our ways, and a great way to kind of get healthier is to expand our kind of portfolio or our menu, I guess, of coping options. So, journaling. One of I would say two of my big ones that are not healthy that I'm trying to work on is food and sleeping. And then I think probably the third one would be becoming very overwhelmed and just becoming just avoidant altogether. Those are my three big ones that I would like to work towards replacing with something healthier. But, it's awareness is a big part of it's a big part of it. Like, once you're aware of, "Okay, this is what I've been doing. This isn't working for me," like, I'm gaining weight or I'm sleeping too much or this is what I'm doing, this isn't working. What can I do instead? And starting to kind of overwrite those coping mechanisms with something healthier. Maybe journaling, maybe calling a friend, maybe um, going for a walk, maybe spending more time with animals or getting a different hobby or, you know, it's hard for a person to quit something if they don't replace it with something else. Because here's the thing, they do replace it with something else. It's just not consciously. Interesting stuff. Oh, let's see. Yeah, that's a good for you, Cecilia. She says, "I'm glad that what is keeping me preoccupied right now is Jillian Michaels workouts rather than something self-destructive." Completely. And here's the thing too, because it's so easy and understandable for people to get out of these relationships and to just they want to numb out. It's very when I was working at the domestic violence shelter, I everybody has this idea of like what something's like and then the reality of it's often very different. It's very common for people, for men or women that are in these kinds of relationships, to try to cope with it, to try to cope with being abused. And so, especially if they don't want to leave or if they're not able to leave, if they don't have money, maybe they're not a citizen of this country, or maybe they don't have a car, or they have three kids and they could work full time, but like they can't afford daycare. And so they're feeling really trapped. And or they're like, you know what? I just feel like I love this guy, but they're confusing love with trauma bonds, right? But like, I just really love this person. I really want to make it work. Or my religion doesn't condone divorce. So I'm stuck. If I leave, my whole family will disown me. And so they're feeling really trapped. And so because they're like, I can't leave, so I guess I better learn how to cope with staying. And they start drinking, or they start eating, or they start using drugs. Very, very, very common. So yes, very common for a person to numb out in a bunch of kind of unhealthy ways if that's what it's a lot easier to go grab a bottle of wine than it is to go for a jog. And so this is why too, so I really encourage you guys, if you are freshly out of the storm, to try to not get lost in drugs or alcohol. Ideally, to not take up drinking as a way of coping, or to not take up drugs as a way of coping, to really try to do healthy things, because it can really take over a person's life. Like, you're very vulnerable in a lot of different ways right now, and it can be really easy to fall into some sort of addiction. There's yoga videos on YouTube that are free. There's affirmation videos. There's guided imagery videos. Jason Stevenson, I love him. He's fantastic. His videos, um, going for a walk, meditating, journaling, reading, writing out, either writing out your story, writing out something completely unrelated, drawing, painting, uh, painting your toenails a different color every single day, whatever, like figuring out some way that you can kind of zone out or to cope or to nourish yourself during all of this. That's that at a minimum is not destructive or doesn't have the capacity to be destructive. Okay. Abigail says, "Hi, I'm new here." Well, hello. I came to the realization last week that I think my husband is just a covert narcissist. I'm trying to get a divorce. However, he is ignoring me like he has never ignored me before. Oh, and this is part one of two. She says, let's see if I can find part two. Okay, I don't see part two. So let's talk about part one a little bit. Yeah. So what you're experiencing is very common. They don't people that, they have reduced levels of empathy, they have reduced levels of remorse, they are selfish. It's all about them all of the time, and they're very kind of driven by power and control. Don't take it well when they lose that power and control. And they either lash out or they do silent treatment or ignore. So it can be very difficult for those that are on the receiving end. It's also probably one of the more potentially dangerous times as well, because to take away power and control, it's like taking away like a toy from a child who's used to having it. They don't react well. With narcissists, or narcissistic people even, tend to not react well to that. So it's really important that you know, kind of just stay very aware of your environment. If you ever feel kind of scared for your safety, to leave and to pack a bag if you can stay at a friend's house, or kind of what have you. But to just always make sure that you're making your safety and your sanity a number one priority. If he's just ignoring you and you're not feeling like that you're in danger, he's just doing it to punish you. You can turn on a radio. You can take up your phone, start watching YouTube videos, or start watching TV, or call a friend, or what have you. But obviously, your situation best, and if he's gonna, how he would react to something like that, if he would fly into a rage, or um, if he would just continue to sulk and pout. Okay, let's see. I see. Got another question here. Oh, I wanted to mention too about the podcast, to just say thank you to everybody that's left a review for it. That's awesome. I know it's a big pain to leave reviews for podcasts on iTunes. I don't know why they make it so difficult, but I appreciate those that have taken the time to do that. And if you didn't know that I have a podcast, I do. It's called Thrive After Abuse, and you can find me on Stitcher and iHeartRadio, iTunes. It's on my website as well, which is also thriveafterabuse.com. And the goal is to be putting out 3 episodes every single week. And then once I can kind of maintain that, and of course, this is a giant learning curve to all of this, then the goal is to do more. So that's what I have in the works with that. And also the book finally, oh my gosh, what an epic like saga this book is becoming. um if you don't remember, if you don't know, I released the book. I quit my job. I ended up developing pneumonia, like the tail end of that. I was sick as all get out for like a month. It was absolutely awful. I'd canceled my book. It wasn't supposed to go live. And then it ended up going live. And then it was this whole debacle over on Amazon. And then I was still trying to recover from that. So I didn't get all this writing time in that I thought I was going to get in. Because I'm like, you know, I set the day out for like 45 or 60 days or something for it to go live. And I got really sick. And anyways, it was a total train wreck. So the book is totally done. It's being formatted as we speak. They I think they said it was like 5 to 7 business days, so it should be up. I'm hoping by the next live stream. We'll see, fingers crossed. So I mean, I've written books before on like totally different topics, but I've never had a book like professionally formatted before. So I don't know. I don't know what to expect with that. So we'll see when I get it back if like you know, I'm really at this point I've been making myself so nuts with this book, and I just trying to be like, Dana, like it's going to help people for what it is. If there's typos, if you miss some stuff, I can always upload a different version like down the road. I think it's a good book. I hope that you guys do too. And if it's not, then let me know and we'll make corrections and re-upload it and just drive on. So that's the plan with the book. Oh my gosh, I am so going to celebrate when that thing is done. Ridiculous. Ridiculous how long that is taking. It's just, it's a heavy topic and it's exhausting. Like I'll write on it and then it's just been such a learning curve. Like I would write on it and then I would get really overwhelmed and have a hard time getting out of bed. Like yeah, I would just want to sleep. That kind of goes back to like that way of coping for me is I just become like really avoidant and like overwhelmed and I shut down. It's just been a process and a half. Diana says about the podcast, I haven't yet figured out how to leave a review on iTunes. Um, I'm sorry, I'm not iPhone savvy. No worries, it's not easy. It's ridiculously frustrating, is what it is. But I'll post some directions on. I think if I haven't already, I'll post them on the podcast page on my website, like a step-by-step list. I came across somebody had posted a step-by-step list of how to leave a review. It was super helpful because I couldn't even figure it out. And I all I listen to are podcasts on iTunes. So frustrating. But supposedly it does help. Like a podcast come up in search and all that. So we'll see. Jessica asks, will this book be available for sale at Walmart? Probably not. So right now the goal is I'm just going to be self-publishing it through Amazon. So it'll be so there's going to be the first wave. The first like version of the book is going to be an ebook version. And then once that gets out, then I have to meet with this company, and I forget the name of what they're called. The guy has been very helpful so far. But then we're going to reformat the book for print. And then I'm going to re-upload it to Amazon. And then when that gets printed, then I have to get like a test copy and make sure that everything's formatted correctly for print. And then that'll go out. And then after that, then I'll start working on recording like the Audible version of the book. So, and then that's going to be a whole nother learning curve. So lots of learning curves. Oh, people are talking about food as coping. So kind of along those lines. Oh, thank you. SG says, way to finish the book and gave a live stream donation. Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Like it's it's really been quite the challenge. So yes, so with weight, one thing I have been doing, which has been so insightful in all these ways I didn't even anticipate, has been with this thing called intermittent fasting. I fell down this hole in YouTube like a month or so ago. I don't even know how I wind up where I end up on YouTube. And came across this thing called intermittent fasting. And so basically what you do is you can pick a window of time. Different people do it for different windows. So for a while I was doing from like between, so I would eat, but only between like 11 and 7. And then it's kind of, it's just been so interesting to pay attention to how I feel emotionally and physically during that, because I freaked out for like the first week, which is sounds so wild, but I would get panicky that like I couldn't eat. And I didn't realize how much I was kind of just snacking, uh, that I would get upset. Like I would read a post or I would read something that would upset me or make me nervous. And I would go run to the kitchen, and it was never a lot of food. So I guess that's why it didn't register as a problem. But it might be like 3 crackers or, a small piece of chocolate or a handful of potato chips or a piece of cheese, or it was never like a box of donuts. It was never anything that registered as a problem. And uh, so then, like, reducing, they call it like your feeding time. So my feeding time was between 11 and 7. And that was very insightful to pay attention to. Like, I would find myself getting up to go to the fridge and realize, like, I'm not even hungry. What am I doing? It's just been very interesting. And so then I switched to kind of eating roughly between those times, but eating more like 2 bigger meals and then trying to do less snacks. And then that freaked me out for a while too, because again, I was so used to just jumping up and then getting something, a little something here and a little something there, but focusing on eating 2 larger meals and snacking less has really, I feel better, and it's just brought a lot more of awareness to kind of calories and calories in one sitting. I don't know. It's just, I would have never guessed it would have been this eye opening for me, but it really, really has been. Let's see. Molly says, I did a real simple intermittent fast between 9 and 9. I now weigh about what I did before getting married 8 years ago. It's shockingly effective. Yeah, I've dropped, I'd have to go weigh myself, but probably about 6 or 7 pounds just from doing that. And I'm not even really changing what I'm eating. It's uh, just being more aware. I didn't realize that I was eating day and night and like little, you know, 50 calories here, 250 calories there. I mean, like, that adds up. So, and then paying attention, like learning to pay attention to my body with the different signs between true physical hunger and like emotional hunger. That's been perhaps the most eye opening of like, I am watching, my God, like if it's something emotional, I'll want to go eat something. Like Game of Thrones, I'm like the biggest Game of Thrones person ever, which it might sound so strange because I don't like violence and I don't like gore, yet I love that show. Um, but that it stresses me out. And so I'm watching it and like I want to go hop up and then go munch on something and realizing I'm not even hungry. I'm just eating because I'm stressed. I'm eating other people's emotions is like what I'm doing really. Or I'm eating, feeling panicky if I'm eating between this window of like 11 and 7 because I'm like, okay, it's getting close to 7. I better eat now. It's like this weird attitude of scarcity. It's just like it's been very, um, very insightful for me. And Jessica says, yeah, Team Daenerys. Oh, I don't know. Is anybody going to win? Is anybody really going to win the Game of Thrones? I kind of think not with the way the whole show is going. Oh, it's just such a good show. So well written. MT says Game of Thrones and The Walking Dead are my obsessions. Oh, I am such a nerd. Let me tell you. Game of Thrones will come on. And then I go and I watch it at a friend's house. And then I go watch it with my boyfriend the next night at his house. And then I go straight to YouTube, and there's like 5 different YouTube channels that are all ab I don't if you don't know about this, I am so sorry, because this will be truly like the final nail in the coffin of your social life. There are these channels that just talk theories of Game of Thrones, and they're so interesting and they're so good, and so then I'll go watch all of these videos about different theories. It's just that's my way, I guess, of unwinding, but yeah, it's such a good show. Bear says, "I've never seen Game of Thrones or Walking Dead or Doctor Who." I hadn't seen Game of Thrones up until, like, last year, and then I ended up binge watching the show, and I started watching it as an escape from like, it wasn't that much of an escape really, because it's all a bunch of freaking sociopaths that run this world, but, in Game of Thrones, but, uh, I was so stressed out with, like, the website and all of this stuff and the support group, and I'm like, "I need a break," and, um, so when I was at my boyfriend's house, he got me started on the show, and then I just got hooked. It was I the writing is fantastic. Yeah, the Lilith says, "I binged the first 5 seasons." Yeah, I did too. I binged pretty much all of it, and, like, it was very traumatizing. That show does not go down in the way that you think it's gonna go down. So, Zamika is here. Hello. Oh, I love that. Kevin, you're so right on. He says, My mantra is to just add in nutritious food, and then I won't want the foods devoid of nutrients anymore." I think that there's so much truth in that. So much truth in that. Yeah, I try to for me, I'm trying to be more aware of just kind of like total calorie intake and not so much on the food itself. Um, I don't know. Like I had eating disorders when I was younger, and so that's always kind of I get concerned. I don't want to go down that road again, and so I want to have a healthy relationship with food is the goal, and so like I don't want to get to that point where I'm like, oh, I can't have a piece of chocolate. Like I just don't want to have the kind of those types of restrictions on what I eat. I want to be able to enjoy a piece of pizza every now and again, or a piece of chocolate, or but I also want to eat, like you're saying, like more nourishing food, like fruits and veggies, and slowing. Oh, here's another thing, slowing down to realize that it's part of my self-care is to cook nutritious, nourishing meals for myself. For so freaking long, it was always about what was cheap and what was fast, you know? And it still is. I mean, that's still something that I struggle with, but realizing like, no, it's okay. Like I deserve to have a nice meal. And even if it's not, I mean, it doesn't, I'm not talking anything fancy, but I'm talking like just taking the time to cook and making myself a priority. That's a That's it's important, and it's important that we do that for ourselves, not just for me, but, like, for ourselves in general. Yeah, Kevin is saying, "I think just adding healthy food is a method that I'm hoping will work for me because there's no pressure of, don't eat the junk food or, um" oops. Or rather, it's just add in healthy, nutritious food. Yeah, so there's a concept that is called crowding out. It's very much like what you're describing, and so it's exactly that. So like you're kind of building up, you're crowding out the bad with so much good. So you're giving yourself like you're just nourishing yourself, and uh and so much of it's true. Like it really will end up crowding out a lot of the unhealthy stuff, because a lot of that stuff, especially if a person's having food cravings, oftentimes it can be like nutritional deficits. Like it can be we're maybe not necessarily craving that food, but we're craving the chemical release from that food, or we're craving the vitamins and minerals in that food. And if we're eating enough healthy stuff, those kind of cravings tend to just take care of themselves. Cecilia says, I know I'm harping on Jillian Michaels, but she's changed my life. I highly recommend it. Very cool. Yeah, she's intense. She's no nonsense. Bear, yes, I did. I mentioned it at the beginning of the live stream. He says, did you get the pics with the shirt on? Yeah. Yeah. I loved it. Loved it. And so I was just saying at the beginning of the live stream how fun it is to see people like who you guys really are, because you see me every week, but I don't know what you look like, you know? And it's fun to see, to put a face to people's names, and um kind of just, I don't know. I get a kick out of it. Oh, hello, Doug. He just pops in out of the blue. He says, happy birthday, Dana. May your year ahead be fabulous, with a very generous live stream donation. Thank you so much, Doug. I so appreciate it. And I hope that your next year is fabulous too. I know Doug hasn't, got some stuff going on. That's okay. But many of our conversations, Doug would talk about working out and getting healthy. And I think we've all kind of been on this journey towards complete and total like health and wellness. So, Doug, if you just popped in here, like you popped in at I think a conversation that you would definitely appreciate. Let's see. Postmodern says, it's your birthday? Happy birthday. July 31st was my birthday, and my 40th birthday, which had some mixed feelings about, but I don't know. It's, any birthday that ends in a 5 or a 0, I think can be a little intense, but I'm feeling good. Like, fresh chapter, fresh, just, turning the page and entering in a whole new decade. And there's just something that's kind of rejuvenating about that. So exciting. Postmodern says, oh, it's another Leo. Oh no, I knew I was forgetting something. Shastina says, were you able to get the info on decompensating narcs? I tuned in just for it. No, I'm so sorry. I totally forgot. Let me write. Somebody did comment though in the last live stream. There was another term. I don't think it was decompensating. It was like the narcissists imploding or something. Yeah, it's when kind of the gig is up and they can't save face, and it's just everything just kind of collapses. I talked about that concept and kind of how I had experienced it before, but I don't think I used that term. Of if you remember the movie Terminator 2, where the like the T-2000 or whatever, the Terminator from the future, that like liquid metal guy, when he fell into the kind of molten metal at the very end, and he kept trying to resurface, and he was throwing out every single thing he could in order to survive, basically, or to like manipulate the situation in order to survive. And so he would rise up out of this molten metal stuff, and he would have the face of Sarah Connor, and then he would rise up again as the face of one of John Connor's foster parents, or as the police officer, all of these different masks really that he kept wearing, until he finally just came apart at the seams and was, reduced to nothing. And with narcissists, it's very much that same way. Like if they are getting cornered and they quickly realize, they just start throwing out all of these different manipulations over and over and over and over, and these different masks until they just realize the gig is up. And then there's just like this internal kind of implosion that goes on. So Cecilia says, I love your movie references. It's all these like 80s and 90s movie references. Nina is going to bed. It says, see you guys next week. Okay. Good night. We'll see you next week. Oh, thank you, Adriana. I appreciate that. Okay, postmodern. Great point. Co- uh, Postmodern is talking about not trusting people at all. This was, where did I have this conversation? I had this conversation earlier today. I think it must have been on the Facebook group. And I think it was actually with the admins in the Facebook group, come to think of it. And um, just it's a struggle that everybody has moving forward. How to date again, how to make friends again, how to just meet people and not feel like you're going to fall apart at the seams, and learning how to trust again. And that's such a common thing. And I think, so I was kind of sharing, I think what helped me with that was to kind of make peace with the fact that people are going to be people. And um there might be people that let us down, and or that hurt us, but to take solace in the fact that we can trust ourselves to keep ourselves safe. So I found a lot of peace in that. And I hope that you do too, of knowing, like, you guys know, like, what manipulative behavior looks like and what it feels like. You know what abusive behavior, how it goes down. You know how it feels like. You know that you're worthy of being treated with dignity and respect, that you're worthy of open, honest, sincere, solutions oriented communication, that you know that happiness is reserved for you too, and that these things are out there, and that if you're ever kind of get tangled up with somebody where they start turning, things start to take a turn for the uncomfortable, and you're feeling like this is not working for me anymore, that you you're in control, and that you can move yourself to a place of safety, and that you can trust yourself. And when you can get to that place where you're like, okay, I can trust myself to keep myself safe. And it's a learning process. There's a learning curve to it. It's a new skill, but knowing that, you know, is such a huge leg up. And so then that way you're not so solely relying on somebody else to just not hurt you. You're kind of freeing that up, being like, you know what? They're going to be people. They're going to do people's things. And, you know, they're going to be who they are, and I'm going to respond accordingly. And that's all any of us can ever do. I hope that helps. Yeah, Jessica says, I do deserve to be happy, damn it. Yeah, you do. Why not you? And I will tell you one thing that I've really learned from this too is that there are, I would really say, and this is probably oversimplifying it a little bit here, but there's like kind of two main types of people in the world. There's people that have never gone through anything even close to this, and they may or may not have a good life. But then there's people that have gone through this and their lives have been blown apart. The beauty for us is that we get to reassemble it piece by piece and figuring out what pieces we want to rebuild with. And I know it might not seem fair, and that it's not right, it's not fair, and we're angry about it. But I will tell you so many of those other people out there whose lives are completely intact and they've never experienced anything like this, a lot of them are not happy. They're going through life with these ideas about who they're supposed to be. Their father wanted them to be an attorney, or their mother told them, this is what a woman or a man is supposed to be, or their culture told them, had all of these expectations. They've lived this whole life not authentically, and it really does take this kind of explosion to go off in order for us to be able to rebuild an authentic life. It really truly does. And so, but when we can get on the other side of all of this pain and start rebuilding and really liking what's coming together, then it's an authentic life, and we're like, you know what, I really like so many things about my life this time around. Yeah. Oh, I agree. Jessica says, I did not deserve to be somebody's emotional dumping ground for their unresolved emotional issues. Yep. I agree completely. You didn't. It's not right and it's not fair. You know, I get it. It's nobody deserves to be treated like this. And that anger and that hurt and all of that it's righteous anger and it's a righteous hurt. Sarah says, I still struggle with being drawn to charming people, mainly due to shyness. It applies to making new friends. I just don't want to get sucked in. So, okay, this is where it comes down to practice. It's a new skill set. It's just like learning to ride a bike or taking up rollerblading or learning karate or anything else. It's a new skill set. And so because it's a new skill set, it's going to take some practice, and you're not going to do it perfectly right out of the gate. Nobody does. Nobody starts off at the finish line. And that can be difficult, and it can really knock a person for a loop if they're like, really again? I encountered this person who turned out to be very different. Don't let that steal your thunder. Don't try to really not let that take the wind out of your sails. It's part of it. It's part of practicing this new skill set. And I get it. I so get it how discouraging that can be. But try to remind yourself to be patient and loving, and like you're like, I'm learning something new every single time. It's the kind of the old saying that sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. Okay? That's what it is. And it's practicing this skill set, and every single time, and this is why too I encourage people to start with making friends or even acquaintances. Start with making acquaintances with people, or if you're not even at that level, start with people watching. It's examining. You're seeing human behavior through a fresh set of eyes, and you're just going to see things very differently now. And that can be an overwhelming thing, but it's a good thing. It really is a good thing, because now you're seeing the world clearly. And so when you're starting to go about making acquaintances, and again, this is why I'm a huge fan of meetup.com, because you can always engage in a group and then you can disengage in a group. You're in charge, you're in control. They might have a meetup for having dinner and a movie, and you decide, you know what, I don't want to do all that. That's too much. But I'm good with meeting them there for dinner and just having a glass of water and then leaving. Like, I don't want to be around total strangers for 4.5 hours. You're in control. You're always in control. It's your life. It's your life. Like, you don't have to do, especially when it comes to meeting new people, you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. So, um, but it really does help to get out there, and when you're starting to kind of get your feet wet, to start practice with kind of just meeting new people before you dive into the deep end and start dating again, because that can really kind of get a person lost in the fog quickly. Uh, I think Missouri Cowboy wants to start a farm, which sounds fantastic. Yeah, Elboz was saying, it's hard getting back out there because normal people don't understand this language or what has happened to us. Yeah, I agree. It's hard, and that's one of the many challenges. Is a lot of people that don't understand, even people that you would think would understand this, don't understand this, and um, it's part of waking up to all of this for them and for us, and it's intense. It's really intense, but it's not the end. It's a beginning. It feels like everything is uh, falling apart, but sometimes it has to fall apart in order to fall into place. SG gives a donation for the Templeton Toy Fund. Um, Templeton, if he had his say, would vote for a bag of Temptations. That cat that is ridiculous with Temptations. As you can tell, you don't get to be that size by not eating the Temptations. Oh yeah, Elboz said, but thank you for the donation, Templeton. We will put it to good use for sure. Elboz says, I have stopped myself mid sentence when I noticed the look on the other person's face was completely lost. Oh, I hear you on that. You know, when all of this started coming together for me, I was working as a psychiatric nurse. The vast majority, actually, all of our patients were either chronically mentally ill or personality disordered or both. And we worked with a lot of really profoundly personality disordered people, people that had committed violent crimes, even murder. And even talking to my coworkers, I just felt this compulsion to talk about this and all of my aha moments and thinking that I'm working with all of these therapists. This is what we do. We work with these people. And I think I really felt like they had no idea what I was talking about. And I could feel myself feeling like they think that I'm crazy. And I didn't like the way that maybe they felt that way. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. I didn't like the way that it made me feel though. And um, so, yeah, I quit talking about a lot of this stuff in public and, um, started sharing more on YouTube and in the support groups and people that get it. It's so infuriating. It can feel so re-victimizing when you share all of these what feel like really hard won insights with other people and they just completely shoot them down or invalidate them. Like it's absolutely infuriating and it's so minimizing and hurtful. And oftentimes they don't mean it to be, they just don't understand, like they just have never been through it, and they don't know what to say or any of it. Yeah. Dana says, people just keep telling me I'll find and wait, just keep telling me to just find and date someone else. Like that will solve everything. Yeah. And it not only it does not, but you know, it's a terrible idea. If a person like we really have to get to the place where we can trust our own judgment of situations and even if we find ourselves feeling introspective, like, is it them? Is it me? Is this weird? Is it because I have issues? Like, ooh, like what's really going on? Because you probably will feel that way. That's very normal. And I think even if you hadn't gone through this, you would people use everybody feels this way when they encounter strange behavior. So, um, you know, but in order for a person to really make good decisions for them, at a minimum, they have to know themselves well enough to know kind of what's a deal breaker, what's a deal maker, what's workable behavior, where their line in the sand is, and that they will leave if they're being mistreated. And that's the most important thing that I hope you guys take away from this is, you don't it's like somebody once told me, they're like, "Dana," because I would do that whole thing of like needing proof. Like, are you really abusive? Like, I'm gonna stick in this until you really cause me a lot of pain and then I'll leave. But only then. Because if I can keep justifying it or if I can put up with it, then it's not a problem. And that's toxic thinking. So, um, and somebody had said, they're like, "Dana, you've seen this movie before. You don't need to sit in here and watch it all over again to realize it's not for you. Like, you can get up and leave at any time." That just registered. That was so profound. Like, oh, I had really thought I would just, you know, I needed to stay in something and try to make it work until it got so bad I could no longer handle it. And I didn't realize that that was faulty thinking on my part. But now that I know that, and now that I know that I'm in charge and that I don't need to compromise on whether, like, how, I don't need to argue my reality. If I feel like I'm being mistreated, then that's it. I don't care if anybody else sees that or not. Like, I know how it feels. I know how this behavior goes down, and I'm going to distance myself. So, if you guys can get to that place too, where you're like, "You know what? I'm not going to put up with being mistreated, and I'm not going to put up with walking on eggshells or feeling insecure or any of that. I'm not doing it." And, you know, that's when you get a good picture of that, then that's a time if you want to start dating to start dating. But dating out of loneliness or dating out of fear or dating out of kind of this attitude of scarcity, like, "Oh, well, I'm going to turn 40 or I'm going to turn 70 or I'm going to, turn 20 or whatever it might be," thinking like, "I better hurry." It's like, it's not musical chairs. Do you know what I mean? This idea of, I better hurry up and get a partner now because there's not going to be any left. Like, no, there's what's meant for you in this life will still be there. So there's no, you don't have to get it all figured out in the next month. Okay. Concerned asks, since one can't get closure from a manipulator, how can one emotionally completely heal without this closure? It's a great question. You have to learn to give yourself closure, and that can be quite the challenge. But I think realizing, you got tangled up with an emotional manipulator, and that they will never give the truth. It will only ever be more manipulations until f- there is no end to it. There's just always just another level of the manipulation. So, knowing this, then giving yourself closure. So, writing a letter. I encourage people, write a letter of everything that you would want to say and or do. Take any items of clothing or things that have significance to you. Have some sort of closure ceremony, whatever that might look like for you. Maybe that's starting a fire in like a fireplace or a fire pit and burning all of this, or inviting some people that are supportive of you to be a part of this, or um, to do it alone and to take pictures and share it in a support group, or to not share it in a support group. It's kind of whatever you feel that might help symbolically kind of close, to help you turn the next page, to help you close the chapter of that book. So I think doing something very symbolic like that can really help a person to realize this is complete. This is done. So much of it starts with just making peace with the fact, seeing the situation clearly. This person's an emotional manipulator, and um, to give up the hope of having honesty or having any form of closure is a big step. Okay, as anonymous question asks, what is the best way to approach no contact or breaking up with somebody who is potentially dangerous? I think it depends. Are you living with this person or do you live on your own? Uh, if you're living with them, then I would encourage you to do what's called a safety plan. Okay, sorry, I'm reading some details here. Okay. So if a person potentially has a weapon and he may or may not be staying there, it can be a challenge. Uh, I am the and everybody's situation is different, but at a minimum, what can really help is if you leave, to not make it their fault. So the whole goal is to not try to provoke a strong reaction in them. And the strongest reaction you can provoke in kind of that fight personality is to make them mad because they're already in that kind of power and control mindset. So going about something in the way of, you know, um, kind of slowly distancing yourself or saying, blaming it on something else, saying, you could even just make up something, saying, what, I've suffered from depression my whole life. And sometimes it can just be really debilitating, kind of planting those seeds now and letting that, and this might sound like really extreme to some people, but sometimes your person's really got to plan about how they're going to get out of that. So if you can make why you're breaking up with them or make why they're distancing themselves from them your fault, it they can't really argue with that so much. And so as long as it's not their fault, then that fight defense isn't going to be so engaged or so kind of locked on. At a minimum, I would um, definitely get some self protection for your car, for your purse, for your house, for multiple rooms in your house. I'm a big fan of like something that you're comfortable using. So, I had mentioned bear mace on here before. Other people have mentioned wasp spray. I think that can be really good. The benefit to wasp spray is it sprays like a good 20 or 30 feet. The problem with mace is you really don't want to get close to somebody because things can happen really quickly. And most designs for mace, it's not an intuitive, like you have to push down and then turn and then pull the cap back. Like it's a whole process that you don't want to have to try to figure out in the heat of something. So, wasp spray, pretty easy to use. Even cans of hairspray, just some sort of idea of like, what you could potentially use. But, um, you know, uh, security cameras, motion sensor lights, um, these kinds of things. Person might not end up needing to actually move or potentially even change their name. It depends. I encourage people to take that route if they feel like that they are going to forever be looking over their shoulder because this person won't leave. So even though it's not right and it's not fair and it's inconvenient and it can be expensive to actually move, it's better than being stalked for years on end and being in that state of hypervigilance, wondering, always looking over your shoulder, wondering when they're gonna resurface. So, if it's an immediate situation where, if a person's afraid for their life, don't hesitate to call 911 at any given time. Calling a domestic violence shelter too, they can oftentimes help, especially if a person If it's a situation where a person's truly afraid for their life, many shelters can help get a person from they can help get a person to even to different countries. So they can help move people for sure from state to state. Not every domestic violence shelter is the same. So a person you might need to call multiple shelters and say, "This is my situation. I'm afraid for my life. This person's, like bringing weapons around, and this is kind of the stuff that they're saying, and I'm terrified." And it's an incredibly threatening and intimidating situation, and I really feel like I need to get out. They can help make sometimes they can help make arrangements with different shelters. So yeah, but that's scary. That's scary stuff, and I'm sorry that you're going through that. But I would take it seriously and always err on the side of caution. And it's difficult too because sometimes the police, even other people, if a person's being threatened in a way that maybe not isn't coming across as direct, because a lot of times they might do something where like it's just kind of catching the attention of the target, whereas other people might not see that it's threatening. And then that can be its own level of crazy making. And this is why I encourage people, pay attention to how you feel. Like if you feel like you're in danger, it's probably because you are. Most people don't walk around questioning whether or not they're in danger unless they are. Yeah. Little Miss says, and sometimes they want you to call the police so they can make you look crazy and petty. Yeah. Anticipation is the biggest tool that you have in your toolkit. So if you can anticipate as much as you possibly can things that they might do. So if you know, okay, they like to provoke me into a reaction. Jealousy, anger are like the two probably common ones until they provoke and they provoke and they provoke until they explode. And then they like to sit back and just be like, see, look at how unpredictable they are. Oh my goodness, I've put up with so much over the years. To plan for that as much as you can ahead of time so you're not so knocked off guard, because anticipation's our number one tool. Their number one weapon is knocking people off guard. That's what they do. That's what they do really well. Like things will be fine. And then boom, now they're provoking a fight, or now they're provoking jealousy, or now it's word salad, or now it's all of a sudden like the conversation just goes off the ditch. And no matter how hard you try, you can't seem to get through to them or get on the same page, or now they're just yelling at you out of the blue, or they're insulting you out of the blue. To try to anticipate that and to anticipate your response to that before it happens so you're not so knocked off guard. So one of the gals had said, um, he's harassing me at home because he's trying to wear me down and get me to settle for less in the divorce. Okay, so if that's what this is what's going on. I'm having to live with this, and he won't move out because he's being stubborn and just difficult. Depending on like your situation, if it's safe to do or not, you know, like trying to make your situation as to cope with it in the ways that you possibly can. So, putting in headphones in your phone and listening to podcasts, listening to affirmations on YouTube, listening to music, um, trying to just not let them knock you off balance or grind you down as much as possible. Focusing on like, okay, what do you have control over? And then to spend your energy in that direction. Yeah. Postmodern says the police, oh, where did it go? The police never questioned me when I called them for domestic violence, and it was verbal abuse and threatening intimidation. Yeah, and police, it just so depends on the officer that you're getting and the training that they've had. Some it just same with therapists. I mean, like some only understand domestic violence in terms of physical violence and ongoing active physical violence. It's infuriating because it's just one small piece of it. It's the verbal and psychological and emotional and financial and sexual and spiritual abuse that really takes its toll on a person and keeps them stuck. It's the physical. Most relationships don't ever escalate to the physical component. And it's all, I mean, all abuse it's destructive and can be deadly and can really grind a person down. Uh, okay, let's see here. Oh, I think, do I have, okay. I have one more comment slash question from, oh my gosh, it's almost been 3 hours. That's so crazy. Time flies. Okay, so this is okay from a fellow Sicilian Sicilian American who's born in the same year. So, okay. Wishing you a magical 40th birthday. Thank you so much. Says, thank you massively for your brilliant videos. Without your eye opening, informative, supportive videos, I could not have survived the horrendous abuse from my father and ex boyfriend. I was in the midst of a dreadful quote unquote relationship. It's really a manipulationship with, we'll call him Ray, and wondering if he has narcissistic personality disorder. I found your excellent red flag videos, which confirmed he is, in fact, a dangerous narcissist. You gave me the motivation and strength to sever all contact with him and with my father. Ray had isolated me from all of my friends, and because I have fibromyalgia, I'm too ill to work. So after going no contact with him, I plunged into terrible loneliness. I was also recurrently suicidal. I was housebound by severe fatigue and cut off from the world, but your videos gave me the company I desperately needed. I live in England, but my grandmother was Sicilian American, and I was born in the same year as you, so I feel a connection with you. And then she sent a photo, which I will say she has amazing skin. If you're watching this, you have amazing skin and hair. So, I'm very jealous of that, but it's a beautiful picture. And like I said earlier, I love seeing pictures of you guys. It's so fun. She says, your soothing, sympathetic, caring, and warm personality was exactly what I needed to get me through that devastating time. With my narcissists, everything was weird and shocking and disturbing and so on. By lovely contrast, you are a reminder that there are sane, calm, kind people in the world. Dana, you are wonderful and you literally saved my life. Thank you with all my heart for all that you do to help survivors. So what a beautiful email. And thank you so much for sending that. And I'm so glad that my videos have been able to be there and to help you through all of this. I think many of us can understand that feeling of like severe loneliness and isolation. And I hope that you're doing better these days and that the loneliness and the suicidal feelings have settled down, because even though, and for anybody else that is feeling suicidal, please know that many of your best days are still ahead of you. They really are. And I know it might not feel like it right now, but this the intensity that you're feeling right now, it will not always be this intense, and it won't last forever. It's there is a future, there is life after this. You can move forward from this. And uh, and so here's just kind of another thought for you would be, if you're experiencing with fibromyalgia and the chronic pain and the fatigue and everything that tends to go along with that, if you haven't already kind of sought out some, there's a ton of online support groups, even on Facebook, for fibromyalgia and for, narcissistic abuse and for all kinds of things. So I hope that that helps because, with the internet, we don't have to be alone. And like, you don't have to be lonely. Like, there's so many other people out there that, that are out there and that have different things going on with them and that have formed groups around it. And it can be a tremendous way to get and give support. I think there's a lot of healing too in giving support to other people that are, maybe a few steps behind in the journey. Never in a million years would I, have thought that anybody would really even see my videos, and um, that they would find so much value in them. It was me sharing a lot of my aha moments and my personal stuff. And I just, like, I was just kind of oversharing my life with this kind of anonymous internet. And I think anybody has that, if you can share different parts that you're comfortable with, especially with like fibromyalgia. It's amazing when other people can see that stuff and they're like, "Oh, really? Okay, I thought it was just me." Like, I'm glad I'm not alone in that. Or starting a blog. That can be, I mean, jumping into YouTube can be like jumping into some rough waters to learn how to swim. But like, starting a blog about what's going on with you can be a great way, and can be a great way to connect with other people that can relate and that support you, and can help find people that are just going through the same struggles. So, but yes, thank you for sending me the picture. It was, like I said, it was fun. Lou says, Dana, what do you think of hypnosis therapy? Uh, I think their hypnosis, I've met a lot of people that have gone under hypnosis for a wide variety of things and have kind of with mixed results. It's, I'm a big fan of kind of looking at risk versus reward. And if the risk is an hour of your time and some, I don't know however much that would cost, $100, $50 or whatever for a session. And, if that's all you're risking, then I say go for it. Why not? Because the reward is really high. If the risk is, some sort of like experimental medication or even sometimes medication in general, and there's no real guarantee of reward, then I'm always a little bit more cautious with that. But therapies like, hypnosis, EFT, EMDR, um, Reiki, even, lots of people report a lot of really positive outcomes with those. So, it's worth a shot. Why not? And if you do try it, come back and let us know. I'd be curious to know what your experiences are. El Boz says, I don't think I can be hypnotized. Yeah, I don't know if I could be either. I don't know. It's it probably depends on a lot of like the skill of the practitioner and all that. I think if I were to try something like that, it would be uh probably EFT or EMDR. Wonderful. Dana says, I've been doing EMDR therapy. It's been helpful. If the therapist knows what they're doing, it's helped me to go to my safe place and finding out why I've gotten involved with a narcissist. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, a good therapist can really be worth their weight in gold. Just like a good it's that 10% in any field, like a good doctor or a good dentist or a good, a realtor or a good investment banker or a good, any painter, mechanic. Oh my gosh, mechanic. Anybody that's good in their field, like that top 10% is just, man, it's a valued member of your team, you know? Somebody else had mentioned that they thought about starting a blog but didn't know how. Uh, there's a site out there called WordPress, and there's a free version of it, or you can buy a domain. There's also, there's another site. What is it called? There's several sites now where it's really very easy. It's kind of, is it Squarespace? It might be Squarespace. If George is still here, I bet he'd know. Where it's kind of a drag and drop where you can create a blogger. Yeah, that's one. Yeah, it can be great. WordPress can be a little tricky. The free version might be easier than the paid version. It's a learning curve. I'm a big fan of, if in doubt, look on YouTube, because there's videos on how to do pretty much everything on there. And that can be a good place to have, to watch. That's how I learned how to podcast. It's how I learned kind of what I've learned with YouTube. It's how I learned Instagram and all kinds of stuff. I just was not, I mean, my goodness, there was so much I did not know and I still don't know about all this, that I just have been figuring out as I go. Yeah, Elboz is saying, yeah, Squarespace is for websites, but I bet a blog would work. Yeah. It can be very therapeutic. So, okay, so let's kind of wrap it up, but let's take some time to do what we've been doing, because I think it's a nice way to kind of close. So if you guys just want to either close your eyes or leave them open, but just take some time to just relax your body and just let all of that tension in your muscles go as much as you can, like you're just turning into a big loose spaghetti noodle. You're just completely relaxing. Just take a deep breath in and then exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. And just know that in this very moment that you're here and that you're safe. Just have it be a reminder that you matter, that you are important, that people do care. And just let all of that tension go. Just drain right through you, into the floor. And as that tension just leaves your body, visualize a healing, bright light just filling up all of the space in your body. Till you're so incredibly full of just white, peaceful, healing light. And take in some time now to just send that light out to others, kind of giving them an energetic hug, sending that light and love out to people. And of course, making sure that you're including yourself in that. And giving yourself a big energetic hug because you matter. You matter. And when you're ready, come back, open your eyes. Thank you guys so much for your time and for joining me and for supporting each other and for being you and for being who you are. And I can't say it enough. You guys matter. And, you know, like there's so much right with you. There really is. There is so much right with you. And I'm so excited for you guys as you start to come into your own and to just live this authentic life and to discover who you are. It's just such an evolution, but you guys are doing a great job. And you know, it's a process. So with that said, just lots of love to you guys. I will see you next week. Lots of love to you. You are not alone. You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care and be extra good to yourself, okay? Because you matter and you're worth it, okay? I'll see you next week. Good night.